Hi everybody, this is Danny, the volunteer coordinator at Fortress, taking you through your very first mentor training of the year. Today we're going to be talking about the mentoring cycle, and we're going to be talking about ways that you can build positive intergenerational communication with your mentees. So we know that good communication is the key to developing strong relationships in general, and that is certainly true with children as well. It's most helpful to focus on the strengths of the child, but that doesn't mean that we won't have challenges. Today we want to remind you of the ebb and flow over the course of the mentoring relationship and what this means for communication with the child that you mentor. The mentoring relationship is intentionally created and purposeful, but you might not see an impact on the child right away. Like any meaningful relationship, it takes time to gain momentum and requires patience, as well as the ability to work through rough patches. Those relationships that continue to grow have a good chance of helping the child. On the other hand, those that stall can actually do harm to a child, which is why we really want to focus on building a positive relationship and making the most of the hour a week that you spend with that child. With any relationship, there are stages of development, which we are going to be talking about. For instance, a couple goes through several stages of a relationship. They date, they marry, they go through a honeymoon stage, and then they have challenges, and that's actually kind of parallels pretty well with the mentoring relationship. Even though we know this will happen, it's worth reminding ourselves that there is an ebb and flow to the mentoring relationship. Knowing that there are phases that can be expected and what the challenges can be in those phases will help prepare you to successfully handle any issues and to seek assistance if you need to. If at any point in your time mentoring with us you would like assistance or advice or help, I'm always available, as well as the rest of our staff here at Fortress, to help you overcome any challenges that you might face. The mentoring relationship phases have sometimes been described as a series of stages and can be described in a variety of ways. Before we go any further, I did want to share that today's training is adapted from the Corporation for National and Community Services Mentor Training Curriculum. We are utilizing their training for the Senior Corps volunteers today, their module called Effective and Respectful Communication with Children and Youth. And as a reminder, at the end of this video, there will be a link to our quiz that'll cover some of the topics from this presentation, as well as give you a scenario to actually practice effective communication. Let's look at the stages of the mentoring relationship. There are 4 stages: beginning and building, testing and challenging, real mentoring, and transition towards closure. We're going to talk about those first 3 stages today. We'll first talk about the characteristics of each stage, some of the challenges that mentors often experience, and some communication strategies that you can use at each stage. So, the first stage, beginning and building. What do you think happens in the very beginning of the relationship when a mentor and child are matched? What are the mentor and child doing? Well, some of the things that you might be doing are getting to know each other, forming first impressions, trying to figure out how to spend your time together, learning a little bit about one another. It takes time to go from strangers to acquaintances to friends. It's a pretty exciting time, but it also can be kind of awkward and anxious. You want to know, does my mentee like me? During the first phase, we start with small talk and eventually build from there. Some of the characteristics of the first stage: getting to know one another, finding common interests, first impressions, trying to see the positive in the relationship, bonding and building trust. And then there are some challenges to the first stage of mentoring as well. Some of the things, this can also be referred to as mistakes, or things that you might do that could actually be harmful to the relationship. So the first one is making all the decisions rather than sharing the responsibility with the child. Activities should be youth-driven in a mentoring relationship. And that's not to say that you should not be enjoying your time as well. We hope that you will mutually be able to decide on an activity to do or on what you would enjoy doing together. But we want you to share ideas with the child rather than saying this is what we're going to do. We don't want the child to ever feel like they have no control of the relationship at all. Missing meetings, especially at the beginning stages of the relationship, can be pretty harmful. That's why we ask that you notify us in advance if you are going to miss an appointment. Your kids really do look forward to seeing you every week, and they know what day you come, and they know when you don't come, and I get to hear all about it. So I really appreciate when you guys let me know. That makes you dependable to the child, because even if you're not there, you thought about them and you let them know that you weren't going to be there. Sometimes it's easy to expect your mentee to open up right away, especially because they were so excited to meet you in the first place. So you think the relationship is just going to only go up from there. But building a relationship and building trust takes time. You have to be patient with the child. People vary in their communication styles, and our kids vary in their communication styles. So they're not going to necessarily open up right away. You have to really invest in them before they're going to trust you with what's most important to them. Sometimes mentors can expect too much too soon. Focus on who the child is, not who you want them to be. And then another challenge you might face is trying to fit in with the mentee's culture. This is something I think is a really easy pitfall. Trying to be cool or be hip or whatever it is. The kid wants you to be yourself. You don't need to sound like another person or sound like you fit into their culture to make a connection with the child. In fact, we want you to just be you. Some more challenges that you might face. Flip my page. The child might become too dependent on you for support during the beginning phases. Reinforce boundaries with your child if that starts to happen. And in fact, set boundaries from the very beginning. We want you to be a support in the child's life, but we don't want you to make the decisions for them. We don't want you to be their fixer. We want you to teach them how to fix their own problems. Which brings us into the next point. Mentors might feel like you need to fix the child's life. Your role is to be an advocate and a friend. So, if your child comes to you with an issue, we want you to take them through problem-solving steps rather than just saying, oh, this is what you should or should not do. You might find that you have some boundary issues with the child or youth's family. We don't experience this a lot here. We are trying to push to have more family connections with the mentors. So you'll probably see that if you're with us this year and especially in years to come. So if that ever becomes an issue, we want you to remind parents of the boundaries. And I'm always here to be a buffer for you if you have an issue. But we do want you to have a relationship with your child's family. It's actually proven to be more beneficial to the child when the mentor is involved with their parents. And then the last challenge you might face in the beginning is that you may feel unappreciated or underappreciated. Don't expect to be thanked. Our kids at Fortress almost expect you to love them. And that's a great expectation. That means that our program is set up well and our kids know that you're here for them. But you're not gonna get a thank you letter right off the bat that you were so appreciated as a mentor. Role model what kind of behavior you expect from your child. How to be appreciative of what's given. And then you can eventually expect that in return. Some effective communication strategies to help you in this stage. Ask open-ended questions. That's a great way to start to get to know your mentee. If you need help, we have a lot of tools in our mentoring area that will help you ask questions. We've got an entire box of questions if you are in this stage. Use body language that is open and not guarded. Nonverbal communication that sends a positive message will help your child open up and trust you more. And also be sensitive and responsive to your mentee's cues through their own body language. Do they seem shy or uncomfortable? Use your sense of humor to help them feel more comfortable. Use active listening. For example, use prompts like, really, that's interesting. Ask open-ended questions for clarification. Demonstrate empathy, and don't be afraid of silence. And then avoid prescriptive communication or forced disclosure. Let the child open up to you when they're ready. More effective communication strategies, using prompts. Yes, I see. Tell me more about this. Speak with language that you feel comfortable with. You don't have to sound like the child to make a connection. Be your natural, charming self. Be careful of stereotypes. Try not to prejudge the child according to what TV or music or media says youth are like these days, or even if you have children of your own. Just come into the relationship open to what this unique child is and who he is and what he does. And don't prescribe him any characteristics. Don't be afraid of silence. Sometimes it's okay to sit silently. You don't have to force conversation. And then if you need to restate boundaries, remind the child of the program rules, be honest, and use I statements to say how you feel, and offer choices if appropriate. This falls in line with our discipline system really well, so if you have any questions about setting boundaries, or if you have issues with a child not following the expectations you have for them during mentoring time, please see me or Blythe. We're now on to the difficult part, the testing and challenging phase. This may happen even after you've built a rapport with your child and seem to be getting along great. So what happens during the testing and challenging phase? Characteristics of the testing and challenging phase, as the name suggests, are that the child may challenge you in some way. They may be rethinking first impressions, and you may rethink your first impressions of them. If your child was so sweet and loving for several weeks and then suddenly starts showing out a little bit, that's very normal. Think about when you're meeting new people for the first time. You're putting forward your best face, and then they start to get to know the real you, which might not always be as glamorous as the face you put up. This is true of our kids as well. The child's going to test your relationship and your commitment. The child is looking for a reaction when they do this. Will you stay around even if they're being difficult? And that's a really important question that our kids are asking you non-verbally. Are you in this for the long haul? Are you here because of me, or are you here because you're going to fix me? And then finally, difficult feelings or emotions may surface. The mentor and the child may feel frustrated with each other. The situation can lead to misunderstandings and miscommunication. So why do you think a child would act like this? You might note that children and youth from situations like those that most of our kids are coming from, they may not have reliable adults in their life who stick around when things get difficult. They want to know that you're different than some of the standards that have been set before. So it's kind of obvious some of the challenges that you may face during this phase. You may doubt your mentoring abilities or feel incompetent. You might feel like you aren't making a difference at all, or you can't connect with your mentee. Don't take it personally. It's not about you. Remember that your youth is just checking to see if you're going to reject them or if you're going to stick around. Stick with them during this time. Affirm your commitment. Show up on time every time. Find new ways to show that you believe that your mentee is capable. You may also still need to be reinforcing limits and boundaries. Our kids respect boundaries. Our kids respect limits. So if you say you're going to do something and you stick to that, and if you say what you expect from them and hold them to that, that's going to build trust with your mentee, which is unspeakably important. You also may feel less interested in continuing the relationship. You may start to feel like your time and effort's not worth it. This is often when mentoring relationships fall apart. So what I would challenge you to do, if you're feeling that way, is to try to be patient and remember why your mentee is challenging you. Think about the good qualities that you have seen in your mentee and try to stick it out. Remember that your mentee needs to see that there are adults who meet commitments and don't quit when things get tough. Last, please talk to me about how you feel and ask for advice. You are certainly not the first mentor to be discouraged. I had the privilege of mentoring a young lady last year, and we had a great time, and then suddenly she stopped talking to me at one meeting. And she did that for about 3 weeks, and it was very difficult, and it made me not want to spend an hour with her because it was just torture. But we got through it, and now she trusts me, and we have a really great relationship. And I know that that can happen for each of you if you just make it through what is definitely the toughest part of the mentoring relationship. Some communication strategies for mentors in the testing and challenging phase. Be consistent in your communication, even if it's difficult. Demonstrate respect so that your mentee will know how you expect to be treated in return. Build in problem-solving techniques into your open-ended questions. For example, you might, if your mentee comes to you with an issue, you might say, I wonder how you would tackle this situation, and let them talk through that. If you have an issue, it's recommended that you raise that issue at the beginning of your meeting and talk through it, and then you're able to kind of let that go and move on with the rest of your meeting. Make sure to separate behaviors from who the child is and don't take the challenging behavior personally. If you have a kid who has a strong discipline issue, that does not define your mentee. That does not define that child. So there's an issue, there's a challenge, and there's an issue, and then there's who the child is, and we want you to separate those, if that makes sense. Disclose personal feelings and experiences when appropriate. This is a great time to start opening up to your mentee and showing them that you really are investing in them and in their relationship, and that you trust them. Stage 3, we put this in quote, real mentoring. Now, this is not to say that what you've been doing before is not real, but this is the stage where you've gotten through the getting to know you, and you've gotten through the testing, and now you are free to really dive into that relationship and invest in that child. Some of the characteristics of real mentoring is that the relationship begins feeling right again. So if you made it through that tough period, you might have felt like you didn't even know that child, they didn't like you. This is when you start to feel we're trusting each other, we're talking again, we're opening up, we made it through. You've established trust, and you've done that by sticking around. And that's really the most important thing we can ask of you, is that you make a commitment and you stick to it. You may start to see growth in your child. I've personally got to see that with almost all of your mentees. For those of you who have been around for a year, I've seen changes in your child. And sometimes we only see that when you're here, because they respect you so much that they are developing new habits when you're around. But that's a step. And then finally, you have a deeper bond and connection. And again, that's simply because you've shown that you care enough to be there. There are still challenges that you'll face in this third stage, but they're much simpler, I think, than some of the challenges you faced in the beginning or in the testing phases. And namely, that is that you may feel comfortable enough to disclose personal information, and we ask that you just be wary of what you share. Make sure that it's age appropriate and appropriate for the relationship. We strongly encourage you to share your testimony and your stories and your advice and who you are with the child. But when you're doing that, take into account how old the child is, what their life circumstances are, and if the information is going to build the relationship. This is not a mutually benefiting relationship in that the child can put into you what you're putting into them. It feels like it oftentimes, but the relationship is for you to invest in the child. So sharing your problems with the child in a way that's not edifying or encouraging can actually be harmful. Some communication strategies for this third stage: continue with disclosures that are age appropriate and support the mentoring relationship. We were just talking about this. We don't want you to not open up to your child. We want you to, definitely. Just make sure that it's edifying, age appropriate, and encouraging. Reinforce boundaries that were set at the beginning. Clarify how you're going to be a part of the child's life. Let them know that you are going to stick around, that you care about them, and that you're playing what you believe to be a very important role in their life. Avoid advising and allow the child to actively problem solve, and you can play a role in this. This is where we're going to get into goal setting a little bit later in the year. We're going to help the child see what they want and get it. But we don't want you to tell them how to do that. We want you to give them the strategies that they need to get there. Build off of your knowledge of the child's strengths to foster deeper discussions. And this is going to require that in the beginning and in the challenging phase, you are getting to know that child, and that you continue to do that during the real mentoring phase as well. That you are understanding who your child inherently is and building off of that to encourage and help them grow. Give positive feedback, and don't be afraid to let the child know when something has hurt you. We want you to have an open relationship with this child. We want you to let them know what their strengths are, but also in ways that they can improve. So if they've ever done anything that you feel isn't appropriate, call them out on it. That's what you're here for. You're here to help them grow. Before we end our training, I wanted to share a couple of additional resources with you. I got today's training from Education Northwest, which is a great resource. It has a lot of tools, especially if you're new to mentoring. There's a lot of things in there that can help you, give you ideas of how to start the relationship, what to expect. I've also included a couple other links here to resources that might be beneficial to you. And then finally, here at the bottom is the link to your quiz that's also included in the email I sent you. Please, please, please don't forget to take your quiz. You will not receive credit for this training if you don't take your quiz. If you have any questions, please contact me by email, phone, or in person, and I'll look forward to seeing you. Thanks.